Howdy, my name is Roger. I love my country, my truck, and Power Platform best practices. If you're serious about becoming a Power Platform solutions architect, join the Architects Accelerator. Now enough of my fake Southern accent, and let's hear from an actual participant of the program, Anna Black.
Hi, I'm Anna Black. I'm the creator of Power Platform Cookbook. I joined the Architects Accelerator because I saw a post from Magdalena and she was so positive and inspired me to join and see what it's all about. Before joining the accelerator, I was avoiding AI. And then when I saw how to apply AI and practice like soft skills, and it just like it really opened my mind to try different things for myself with different tools and everything. It really helps you to evaluate what you know and what you don't know, because when you are doing your job for like so many years, you might be missing a trick and like a different approach. So it really helped me to look at the problems from a different angle. And it was really great to meet with people and be like a part of another community and exchange ideas and so on. So yeah, lots of benefits that did change my life. So thank you.
The link is in the show notes, or go to untethered365.com to learn more.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Sprint Zero podcast. Oh, sorry, no, let me make that right. Hello everyone, and welcome to the almost award-winning Sprint Zero podcast. My name is Mike Gowland, and I'm here with my co-partner rat in crime, John Russell. Say hello, John.
Hello, how are you? Almost winning.
Almost. I'm not bitter about it at all.
No, I'm not.
I think our friends, co-pilot Connection and Damien Bird definitely deserve that award.
Yeah, I mean, it means we got joint second, right?
We got joint second, and we can use that on our logo, which is now been redesigned. So that's all good. Nice. So, John, today's guest is a true tech aficionado and a seasoned expert in the Power Platform, Keith Watling. Keith brings a wealth of experience in ensuring quality and standards in tech projects, having seen firsthand the highs and lows of the industry. He's here to share insights on how alignment and understanding are critical for success, why he's not fussed about tech features anymore, and maybe even a story or two involving some unexpected topics. I dread to think, based on the conversation we just had. Please welcome Keith Watling to the show.
Hello.
Hello, mate.
I doubt it'll be award-winning anymore unless it's a custodial award after this podcast.
No, nearly award-winning. Nearly
custodial award.
So, Keith, cheers, mate. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Sorry it's been rescheduled a few times. Apologies for that. Do you want to give us a bit of an overview of how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, well, I mean, like we were talking about taking things literally in alignment. So I could just say, I got out of bed and walked into this room and sat down, right? Which is a bit like...
The commute's hard when you work from home, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's a little bit difficult, like on the topic of alignment and understanding and stuff. But I got into this madness that we call tech when I was a little kid. My dad bought me a BBC microcomputer, you know, the really crap ones that no one wants and had no games.
Nothing crap about them.
Nothing. Like, it was like all my mates had Spectrums and cassettes and cartridges and stuff, and I was stuck with the computer that you had at school. But when I went to school, obviously I could make it read words all over the screen, and that's what I spent most of my childhood doing. So yeah, and then I just kind of like drifted over to it when I got to college and saw this multimedia thing with these animations floating around on the screen. I did a bit of multimedia for a bit, and then good bit of graphic design on Macs and stuff, and I got out of it, worked in public transport for about 17 years, and halfway through that career I got bored one night. We had to write everything down, and someone had made like a spreadsheet to do it all on instead, and it was rubbish. So I thought, I better build a better one of these. This is dreadful. So I started building stuff and making things, and then the next thing I know, I'd started coding VBA, and then I'd sort of learned Python, and I've learnt JavaScript, and I'd learnt this, that, all of which I've forgotten. You know, and then the next thing you know, you're in a position where you're kind of looking at things, and someone in work said to me, "Oh, have you seen this Microsoft Forms thing? Really good." And I said, oh, yeah, I'll have a look at that. Yeah, it looks right. But it couldn't do context-sensitive drop-downs. And I was like, I really need to do that. Like, all this free text data is no good. I need it to be contextual. It's really important. Like, one of the things that we built in Excel that was really good was all this very dynamic, contextual, sensitive stuff. And I clicked on Power Apps. And I thought, that looks really difficult. And then 2 weeks later, I shut it down. And 2 weeks later, I came back and had a look at it again. Because I thought, there's no way I'm getting into that madness.
Funny enough, that happened to me when I first opened up the Canvas App Studio. I was like, what the hell's this? And just closed it down.
I was like, this looks far too difficult. We shouldn't be playing with this.
I'm coming back to this later.
Yeah. And I took a part of the template, put it back together again, and then made this little demo app. And it really, took everyone by surprise at work that could be done, because before we'd had to code everything from scratch, and this was when sort of Django was kind of how you did it in Python and Flask and kind of those frameworks and all that kind of thing, but it was really difficult to deploy in an enterprise, like stuff like that. Like, you could do it off the side, but if you wanted to connect it to the enterprise, that was really difficult. And Power Platform allowed me to connect to the enterprise. If anything, I'd have just wished that I could have connected to the enterprise and continued to do the pro code in retrospect. But Power Platform's 8 years old. Probably by the time this podcast sees the light of day, it will be Halloween. So Power Apps and Power Automate are 8 this year, which
8 years old. Wow,
which seems pretty.
That means we got to release this episode before Halloween now.
Well, I mean, it's
we could release it on Halloween.
Yeah, or just a bit before. But the point is, it's like, if you think about it, people still sit there in customer land, going like, "Oh, it's new. We don't know whether we can trust it or not. We don't like." They're still like, "Oh, we haven't done that yet." And I'm like,
"What's this? What's this Microsoft?"
Yeah,
I don't think it's only in customer land though. I've seen younger people coming into the consultancy space who are wondering what it is, and they haven't really seen it before. That's they're coming in as a graduate, and they're like, well, I don't know, I don't know how big this thing is. Do I go all in on it? And I'm like, yeah, I think you should, and kind of give them some figures. And it's funny how they, when they're at the start of their journey, they don't see that they don't see the community aspect straight away, and they don't see how big the platform is straight away. And I felt exactly the same when I first started. I was like, I doubt many people know about this.
I think it's a weird one. I think it's to me, I don't think it's quite grown as much as I'd expected it to grow, if I'm absolutely honest with you. I think businesses are still scarred by sprawl, this awful word that they use, and that's not a team sprawl or SharePoint sprawl. It's any user created stuff, right? IT is on the hook to secure and manage things, and the alignment between IT and the business and what can be done, should be done, could be done is it's like IT departments' budgets are a support function. They very rarely do innovation in a true way anymore. It's like you've got other people doing innovation because IT can't innovate. And there's a reason for that, is that most of the time they don't understand the business because they've got the magic box that runs the damn thing. And their entire time has been spent trying to secure, monitor and maintain the thing.
Yeah,
and that I think is a real problem.
They see it as a threat.
Indeed, yeah. And I think that's like part of this whole conversation that I wanted to have with you today. Like in terms of consulting land, okay, right. You're going in, and normally the target technology's been selected, right? So you're already on a journey to doing Power Platform, and you've got to have those standards in place for the project to be successful. But if you think about the platform inside of the organization, that alignment, security, the quality, the standards that you need to have in place to do it at an enterprise organization are hard won and hard come by. And what they're looking for is a best practice. And the problem is, unless you go to the community, there is no de facto best practice. SharePoint had that kind of thing going with it a long time ago, but I genuinely think that they've just kind of not really kind of maintained or thought about how Microsoft adoption works kind of inside of that organization, when the IT department's main goal is to not get sued and not get fired by having a big hack, and that's why Azure is what it is because it's like a consumable pay-as-you-go model rather than this kind of like business commitment licensing that means you get into this.
So do you think there's it's a bit like a gastropub, right, where the pub's trying to be a pub and a restaurant at the same time, but then ends up doing both badly? Do you think there's an analogy there with Power Platform and the fact that they're trying to appeal to consultants and Microsoft partners? They're trying to get into enterprise situations. They're also trying to enable subject matter experts embedded in business who might not have any IT background.
Yep.
And they're kind of quite spread thin. So, but I understand it. I understand it, the whole democratization of it. And I don't think I would be in a consultancy if I'd not had that exposure to it.
No.
But I don't know. It's a hard one.
I think it's quite interesting, right? So like, if you think about that gastropub analogy, it's really strong. It's really strong, right? That's a very, very strong analogy, John. And immediately what popped to my mind was some of the successful gastropubs I've seen recently, right?
Yeah.
And the difference is the kitchen and the bar are separate.
Yeah.
They're in the same building, they're part of the same team, but they operate independently. So they're disposable and composable together. And I think that's what the IT departments need, is that alignment between IT and the business. And almost Power Platform sits with the business, or sits with a group inside of the business, which is performance or innovation or business change. And they use the platform to innovate, and it hands over naturally to IT. And all you've got to do is put some standards in place for making that happen. Now, I'm not going to blow my own trumpet here, but basically I think that if you think about the Power Platform adoption framework, in there's this conversation about limited high impact deployment, which is this one big workload that's like mission critical that comes into that. And the way the enterprise architecture model works, going from productivity workloads to important workloads to critical workloads, I see it that the business adheres to the policies that are set out by the governance, and they fill the innovation backlog in those buckets. And as long as the standards are adhered to, everybody's happy, right? Like it requires some work and it requires some investment, but I think everybody's so het up with like the money that it potentially will cost, they lose sight of what the potential business benefits might be, because nobody can quite quantify them. And every time somebody's promised something like this in the past, it's not delivered. You think about those big ERP projects.
Do you think on that point where they're unsure about the financial commitment because they can't see the benefits, do you think that's masqueraded by the fact that they almost have to build it themselves as well?
Yeah.
And do you think that's a stumbling block? Because there's a difference there between, here's the product, the off-the-shelf product that's going to save you time, and like it's configured this way, so all you need to do is just install it, leave, just let it run, and then it will bring those benefits. Whereas a Power Platform, it's a different proposition, isn't it? It's like this whole platform can do so much your business, but you need to find out how it best works for you and build it.
Agreed.
I think that's where it falls over.
And how you support it.
And how you support it as well. Yeah. So actually, there's that financial commitment, and then there's also that time commitment. And you know what? SMEs have a day job as well. They don't need, they might know Excel, but they don't have the time necessarily to go and learn Power Apps.
They all do it, right? They all do it. I was that guy. Yeah. Like, there's so many people sit there playing with Excel in a business that isn't their day job, but they manage to get their day job done playing with Excel, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's chicken and egg. The problem is that the IT department don't know about it. They don't know about Excel. They don't know about how much time is in Excel. They don't do the good old fashioned time and motion study of how many people are sitting around thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
And that's that alignment between the business. It's the same. It's the same with with projects. It's the same with consultancy. It's the same question that I ask myself every single day. Every single customer interaction I have is, do they understand? Do they understand? And do I understand? Right? It is all too easy. I've seen so many people sat there in over the years in community calls or calls with me when I've been helping in a community, or just various workplaces. Everyone's got one or two people, like one or two instances like this, not people, just instances like this, where that somebody sat there in a meeting or on a call and they can't wait for it to finish, either because they don't understand, they're out of their depth, and they ask a question and so on and so forth. In fact, one of my colleagues, she came up with this brilliant phrase the other day, and I swear to God, like, I've seen so many phrases in business that matter, right? And she came up with this brilliant saying, and I said, "Is this a cultural thing?" She said, "No, I made this up. Are you ready for this?" She said, "Better to be stupid, dumb for a second." That was it. Better to be dumb for a second than stupid for a month. Right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, just ask the damn question. Just okay, you don't know. Right?
Questions.
Yeah. And in that moment, I'd forgotten all I knew about technology, or like, what does SQL stand for again, or whatever that is. Whatever stupid.
One of the books that we talk about on the podcast quite a lot, because we both read it, and I think I'm on my third or fourth reading, is that Getting Naked book.
Yeah.
Right? Now, don't get excited, Keith.
I already am from the waist down, mate. You just can't see.
I thought so.
We all are.
I could see a bit of camera wobble. Getting Naked by Patrick Lencioni, his name is, and that is all about. It's basically it's like a story told from his perspective about how he has realised that the way that he consults in his bigger company isn't working properly. And one of the key things that he says in that is that you basically have to take the hit for the client a bit sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, there could be someone in that meeting that is dying to ask a question but doesn't want to be shown up in front of their peers. Yeah. And you need to be, as the consultant, you need to be the one that asks those questions, that gets those what you may think are silly questions, because it breeds trust, right? It becomes you get closer to this mutually beneficial partnership or relationship, because the person in the room who's going to ask that question hasn't asked it, or hasn't been forced to ask it. You have, and you've got them on side just from asking that question. And also, the other thing is that if you don't ask it, you might assume something later on, and assumptions are killers, right? Assumptions are the killers of projects. So
it can spark conversation as well with everyone in that meeting, because although it may seem like a stupid question, sometimes they actually realise that actually, you know what, we could do that. Well, it sounds ridiculous. Actually, yes, we can do it. Yeah, it could be an option. Sometimes it's a good option.
The question is, is at the end of those alignments, are you grounded in reality? Do they understand? Do you understand? Are you both grounded in reality? Does the data make sense? Does the data work? Whatever it is you're talking about, does it make sense? Does it align with everybody? And sometimes, it's one of the big mistakes. Here's a great example, right? When I first came to start doing projects on the ERP side of things, having a background in transport, we never talked about the price, we just talked about the cost. So I would use the term cost and price interchangeably, and they were two completely different things. And it was sort of like I had to really learn to modify my vocabulary that these, purchase price, sale price, cost, manufacturer cost, all these various things just didn't come out of it, right? And I think it's all little bits like that, is that you see people nodding, and you see people nodding because they're nodding because it's just either providing comfort to themselves or providing comfort to the customer, and actually they don't understand. And it's not as big an embarrassment as you think it's going to be. But I go back to that. I would rather be done for a second than stupid for a month. Yeah, it's. I mean, done for a second, stupid for a month, until you read one of the errors from Power Platform, and then you have no idea what you're talking about, and you copy and paste that error code into something, and you still wouldn't know. But yeah, no. So you will be done for a month because no one knows what they mean. To be fair, so
how has no one had this error?
Yeah, no, yeah. Paste it into Google. ChatGPT doesn't know what it is. It's all good. But yeah, so my kind of like tips, I suppose, for that success is that there's two ways there's three ways you can do it. You can talk it through, you can walk it through, or you can write it down, right? And if you talk it through, you might not get the same level of understanding as if you walk it through, and I mean whiteboarding and diagramming, right? And the whiteboarding and diagramming, the actual diagramming normally comes off the back of the whiteboarding session. And the write it down piece is taking that whiteboarding session, taking that whiteboard and turning it into something, or like writing it down and then making sure that you go back and critique it. Now, one of the big things that you got to get over in project land and in not so much in business, because if you're in customer land, people don't pick apart stuff as much as they do because you know the business, right? Most of the time you're in that business, you know the business quite well, unless you're in the first sort of 6 months, right? But like after a while, you know the business. You could write it all because you're the customer, right? You're the boss. But if you're in partner land, it feels like there's a lot of like consulting land. It feels like there's a lot of critique of what you've written down and what you've drawn down, and it's not. This is just a process of alignment. And where I see people get upset, my friends in the community and like all over, where I see people get upset is when they take that criticism personally, or they haven't spoken to the customer and said, hey, listen, this is going to be wrong. We need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. We need to know that what we write down is probably not going to be right. It's going to be might be 80, might be the old Pareto 80-20 rule. It might be worse than that, but we need to refine it together. So we're going to do that in a calm, considerate, consistent way, and just sort of chill out and make sure that this is a process of refinement and understanding.
Because iteration isn't anything if you don't have continuous feedback. If you don't have continuous feedback, iteration is not going to exist.
No. I do think you need some time to get your thoughts together and get it all written down. Like I think that's also important. So I sort of I'm a big fan of not having back-to-back meetings around that. Like if you're having those alignment sessions, you cannot end it and go and do something else.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Go and have a cup of tea, 20 minutes to sit and think. Right. I have a chair behind me for a reason. I sit and think. I have a sit down and think for 10 minutes, like just sort of, okay, what did that mean? Like get away from the screen, just like think, what data model am I designing? What fields do I need? What interface do I need? What's the customer trying to say here? What's the concept behind it? Have I got anything to answer that? What work do I need to do? Do I need any additional workshops? Like it's one of those like things that you just need to stop and think, because it's so easy to sit behind a keyboard and just press the buttons and feel successful.
Back-to-back meetings as well, where you've got you context switching is difficult. No matter how many people say they can do it, it's still difficult, and you will always drop the ball somewhere.
Yeah,
the cleverest guy I know, Andrew Welch, right? Oh, not the cleverest guy, but the most creative thinker I know in terms of coming up with new stuff. Andrew comes up with amazing new stuff, right? He's an incredible thinker. And I remember sitting down with him one day and looking at his calendar, and I was like, what are these like little abbreviations? He's like, well, that's my start of day, that's my end of day. And so it's like 20 minutes start, 20 minutes end, but also these little pockets of like thinking time, And people say, what does he do? What does he do? Like he should be sitting there pressing buttons on the keyboard, making stuff happen. And I'm like, but we've just proven that AI can do that for us. And what are we what's the new, what are we looking for? We're looking for this artificial intelligence because there's not enough human intelligence to go around because the human intelligence is too busy pressing the buttons, right? So like that thinking about what you do, are we aligned? Do we have standards? Have we got these things in place? It's I think that's the most key thing to success actually in any project is sitting and having a good think about it, you know.
Yeah. So we've talked quite a lot about alignment and understanding and how they can be crucial for the success of a project. Can you share any specific examples where a lack of these led to a project's failure and what could have been done differently?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably my favourite one was being asked to design a it was one of my first apps. Someone asked me to design an app for some engineers to do some inspections, right? And the manager came in. He went, "Well, right, I know how to do all this stuff. I've been doing it, man, dog and boy. Right, here's the form." I said, "Okay, right. What do they need to fill the form in?" I said, "Okay, all right. How do we do it?" Yeah, okay. Good consultant sitting there going, "Okay, you want these fields and you want those required? Yeah, you want those required? Yeah, yeah. And that one needs to be like if that one's that one needs to, yeah, no problem. Great, brilliant. Made all those required. Made it so the form filled it all in order. Proper, beautiful, lovely piece of work it was. Took it to the engineers on the shop floor. Guess what happened? Couldn't use it. Why? Because the first thing they did with a bit of paper that the manager used to give them was turn it over and fill in the back. And then
Amazing.
They go in the office and then fill out the front, right? After they've done the inspection. They're going right down all the things that were wrong with the thing, right? They were inspecting on the back of this sheet. And then they go and fill in the bit, what machine it was, what thing it was, where it was, all that stuff. And of course, I'd done this beautiful form that, like, you pick the machine, you pick the location, you pick this, you pick that, blah, blah, blah. And then you can say what's wrong with it. So, yeah, it was complete lack of alignment, complete lack of understanding. And it was I wasn't aware that I needed to ask this guy, is this grounded in reality? Do you understand? Like,
And actually, the conversation with the engineers on the floor probably would have
asking the right people. Yeah,
he didn't understand.
Yeah,
he didn't understand. He didn't understand that I didn't understand, and that was that understanding. It's just that question you got to ask yourself: does everybody understand?
And I think the distinction there is not only did he not he thought he understood, rather than he didn't understand.
He believed.
He believed he understood, and he believed he knew how those other engineers worked, and actually he didn't.
Belief is a strong word as well.
Yeah, he had a really strong belief that that's how it should be done. And the best bit of it is that, like, the next engineer I gave the form to, right? So I was like, "Oh, okay. So if you inspect this machine this way, I'll make it so that it follows that order." No, because the next person inspected that machine backwards, the other way. It didn't actually matter. So I was like, you know, you've got to. It's sort of. There's a lot of software that's designed in a meeting room, and there's a lot of software and a lot of systems that are designed in Teams calls or designed in a room somewhere. And they can be, but there is nothing like seeing what it's supposed to be like. And a lot of people have talked about UX design, but like that UX design meant that the system wouldn't work. You know, people talk about user experiences. It's this throwaway thing. Well, they should just do it the way that the system tells them they should do it. And it's like, well, no, that's not how it works. They're not going to use it. Yeah, they're not going to use it, right? That particular engineer is covered in grease, covered in oil, covered in God knows what else, got gloves on, it's dark, all the rest of it. It's like, we haven't thought about that at all. It's very different from playing a game on your phone, you know, with like, you know, it's that person's going to be okay, but right, it's just that understanding piece is just so critical. And that goes down to even like defining the values in a choice field, what they want to do in the future with it, blah blah blah, what the date range is. You can take that anywhere you want, but like, I've
got a thing about choice fields, and I always put the value to be useful. So I've done one recently where we had to put in like the frequency of something that's going to run on a schedule. Say you have daily, weekly, monthly, and rather than just putting 1, 2, 3, 4 or 7 million and 1, 7 million and 2, of actually putting like 1, 7, 14, 28, 365.
Yeah, nice.
Because when you actually go to use that in automation, you can use that value to do something with it.
Pair the fields together, man. Like that's what. So I know I do those like weekly, monthly, yearly ones. I always have an integer field that says how many a week, how many a month, how many a year.
Yeah.
You know, like the interval frequencies and stuff, because then it makes life easier.
And I know, Keith, you talk about like being concerned about what the customer gets rather than the technical features. How do you balance the customer needs with the technical feasibility, and especially when they're at odds with each other?
Yeah, there's one of the greatest phrases I learned was a target technology. As a target technology, what's the target technology for this workload? And I often feel that that's not the job of somebody non-technical to define.
Yeah.
That needs to come in. What do I need to do? Offer that understanding, and let's say that particular workload, right? Does that need to be a Power App, or am I being told that's going to be a Power App?
Yeah.
And I've seen it before where somebody has told me that this will be delivered a certain way. And I'm like, it is unfeasible that it's to be delivered that way. This was another company, not the one I'm at now. And I'm like, guys, it can't be done like that physically. And they tried to make me build it. And of course, I sat there and tried my very hardest to make it work. But ultimately, it was unperformant and hellish. And I was over collecting things in a Canvas app and doing all sorts of weird stuff. It was the only way you could get the filtration to work and rah, 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 rah. And it's like, it should have been a model-driven app, but they needed it to be a Canvas app. They needed it to look like a web page and needed it to do this. And there was like, you're going to prove to these guys that this technology is what they need. And it's like, well, actually, we've done the complete opposite of it.
Yeah.
Because you've selected the wrong workload to bring to the wrong to a piece of technology that's very, very capable, but
not in that way.
Not in that way. No. Did it work? Yeah, it did. If you didn't mind a little collection running at the beginning of the app and a few other bits of madness, the
5-minute loading time. Yeah, great.
It wasn't too bad. I got it down to a few, like sub 10 seconds, but that's still a bloody eternity, right?
Yeah.
But there was also the people doing the world's most unfavourite thing of mine, which is using Power Automate, thinking it's Power Integrate, right? And it ain't, right? It's not same. It's different. No. So yeah, it was. Can
you talk about that? Because I've seen that phrase thrown around a few times by a few people.
It's my phrase. I invented it.
Yeah.
Talk
about what do you mean by Power Integrate for our listeners?
Yeah, well, it's basically it's not. There's no such thing as Power Integrate, right?
No, exactly.
But people keep thinking that Power Automate is an integration solution, and it is. It can be an integration solution in a very lightweight way, right? But it's not what its job is. And because it's not what its primary job is, it can struggle when to scale, right? So you've got to look at your workload and you've got to look at your target technology. And if someone's telling you to integrate something with Power Automate, you need to buyer beware, right? How many records a day is it? Oh, it's 100.
Yeah.
Okay, it's 100 records a day. It's great. Fine. That'll pass. We can handle that all day long. Oh, should we use a data flow? We can orchestrate it with Power Automate, blah, blah, blah. All happy days, right? Or that's if you're using Dataverse, right? But if you look at kind of the way in which many integrations work these days, even today, even in big ERP land, this CSV file's getting dumped in a staging area that's waiting to be uploaded into the system. You don't directly write to the database and all this blah 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 blah. The Power Automate most of the time writes directly to the database, so it's bad. You don't want to do that. The experience I had was 4,500 records. Right? It's not big. It's not a lot, but guess what? Those 4,500 records were JSON, so they had nested lots and lots and lots of nested fields. So and it was HR data. Someone came along and changed the abbreviated all the job titles in the business, or did something to those 4,500 records. And guess what? Creates cascading nightmare that takes 24 hours for the flow to run. And because it updated every single record inside of Christendom, and they're all of the child tables as well. So sort of you've got to really like think about what you're doing when it comes to tools like that. I'm a massive Power Automate fan. I have been for a very, very long time. But just like with Power Apps, just like with Excel, you know, you can do some really dumb, daft things with it. And I think in certain circumstances for event-based automations, Power Automate can be a viable integration solution for smaller stuff. But I wouldn't put it in there as an enterprise-grade integration solution, because any data architect would just laugh you out the door. You know, and I think trying to wrap it up is stupid. I think that's daft. Like, let's keep it to what it's good at. I also think, and this is a very controversial point of mine, I also think that quite often most Power Automates, I consider Power Automates to be mutable, right? So if it is a core business process, then it should probably not be a Power Automate. As in, does it need to be mutable by an end user? Does someone need to change the way the report runs? Does someone need to change the way the email looks? Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's a Power Automate all day long. Let's do it in Power Automate, right? Right target technology. Is this a immutable workload that doesn't change? It's a core business function. It's a core part of the organization. It needs to have that operational rigor. It needs to run synchronously. It needs blah, 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 blah. It's code. It's code, or it's a logic app, right?
Yeah.
We just, and this is what I mean about having definable standards. Like, I speak to people and they tell me, okay, if I spend all my time, what you doing? Oh, I'm fixing flows, man. Oh, these flows are broken, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, all right. And we're doing the error checking, error handling, da, da, da. Okay, well, if you were in Codeland, man, you'd be laughing right now, right? And it's probably cost you more, and because you've decided to take this target technology approach and not architect it and define good architectural coding standards and build standards in the right way. Like we in Partnerland, and this is it's a real big topic. This don't want to open the lid on it. We in Partnerland, we are not citizen developers anymore. We're professional developers. We've been paid to do this, so we should be using the grown up tools. We should be doing it properly. Things should be enterprise grade. Things shouldn't break. We should be able to build software that's a bit as good as off the shelf software that you get. Should be, Power Platform shouldn't be any different. And in my mind, that means that if that means we have to roll our sleeves up and write a few more lines, then so be it.
Yeah. So Keith, where do you see the industry heading in the next 5 years with regards to technology being at a crossroads? And what do you think companies should focus
one end
on
of
to
crossroads, isn't
avoid
it?
pitfalls of failed projects?
Yeah, I think in my opinion anyway, if you look at the Power Platform community, and there was once a comment made, and I feel like I'm the SharePoint guy, right? Like, it feels really quite terrible me saying this, but there was a really lovely group of people when I first started Power Platform, the SharePoint community. They really helped get it up and running. And they said, Keith, he says, there was a load of people who were ex VBA or ex COBOL or ex whatever they were, who all came running to SharePoint to get this thing done, Silverlight or whatever it was, blah, blah, blah. Loads of different people all came running to this thing. He says, you're going to get that with Power Platform. There's a group of people who run from one new technology to the other and want to keep pushing the boat out with one thing, he said, and they're seen as like the new kids, right? They run around from one tech to the other doing the newest stuff. So then you get this other group of people who are deeply, deeply technical, who have been with that product since day one, and they will never leave that product. They're the ones who are the COBOL, still the COBOL developers, right? And I see that very much happening with, guess what? AI, right? Everybody's running around and looking to do something with it. And I think the number one problem with that isn't that AI isn't capable, isn't that it isn't amazing, isn't that it isn't blah, blah, blah. It's that they haven't done the business analysis and they haven't got the understanding of what the technology can actually do and align that to a business need. That's the bit that I think is where the world is going. Yes, it's going towards AI. Yes, it's going to go there at an incredible rate, faster than Power Platform happened, faster than the mob before that, faster than the lot before that. But I think what's really important is just to sit in the chair and think for a minute. Is actually like, what can it do? And you need to have some technologists along for the journey to find out what that thing it can do is. So if anything, the direction of technology in the next 5 years, I would say, needs to be more about understanding what it can do, because for your business or for your workload, because there is almost an infinite amount of choice out there, and knowing which one to pick and how, and like selecting the right target technology and then getting the understanding on it, that's the hardest bit as I see it right now. Like,
we could all be a bit more tech agnostic as well, couldn't we?
Yeah. There's going to be so many poor smocks in the AI space that are going to be told this is an AI workload where it's actually a form, right? Or it's an automation, or it's a whatever. Can't you just? I can see my old transport people now. They used to talk about the robot. We need the robot to come and do this automatically and all the rest of it. And I'm like, you can't even tell me digitally who's driving what bus. Right at the time, right? So how do you want me to do dynamic scheduling if you can't tell me what driver on what duties on what bus? It's impossible.
I think the AI term at the moment that's being bandied around a lot, which I'm starting to get a bit annoyed about, is agents.
Yeah.
Not I'm annoyed about it, but it's like, well, what actually is an autonomous agent? What is, I think people's definition of that changes depending on what products you're using and what it can do. So, you see people talk about agents and they say, well, you can ask it a question and it goes off and does that. Now, in the Power Platform, you could create a co-pilot agent, but actually it's not autonomous, because you're telling it that it needs to use X and Y connector from Power Automate to be able to do that task that you're asking it to do. Now, to me, an autonomous agent would be something like, I've got something on my phone, and I say, right, I need you to book me a holiday to Denmark between these dates. You've got access to my banking details. You've got access to how much money I want to spend. I don't want to spend more than this much money. Go off and do it. Make the phone calls. Come back to me with options. That, to me, is autonomous.
How do you think that agent's going to connect to those services and make that phone call?
Yes, fair enough.
Well, theoretically, if it's all defined, right?
But that's my point, is that an autonomous agent, to me, should be able to work out how to make those connections themselves.
Yeah.
Whereas
I think that's risky, though. I think that if you're going to let it decide what it's going to connect to, I mean, you can put the guardrails in place, sure.
Yeah.
But you're sort of like you're telling this thing, in quotation marks, that it could go off and access database, and also, like, if it wants to, it can go create a Twitter account as well. Like, it could go wrong.
I mean, it can't do any worse than the human Twitter accounts that get created, right? And
true, that's true.
Who knows? The AI might buy Twitter. Sorry, X.
You could argue he already has. I think you probably know that we have this section called Uncomfortable Corner. Hello.
Have you got theme music as well? You guys are so professional.
We are.
Yeah, mate.
It's almost like you should have won an award.
I know, right?
We almost did. Keith, when was the last time you felt uncomfortable, like in or outside of work? You want to explain how you felt and how you got through it and what you learned about yourself that you could employ next time if you're faced with the same situation?
Jesus, that's a difficult one. The last time or the most uncomfortable?
It's up to you. Your choice.
I think if the uncomfortableness is higher, it'll probably make better content. So
I talk a lot in my life about head in your hands moments. Those head in your hands moments when you said something, did something, almost got you sacked. You know, often, like, if you ever come for a job interview with me, one of my favourite questions is, tell me the last time you almost got fired, right? And what did you do? Because it can actually be quite a good story. Quite often you've pushed the boat out, you've done something totally crazy.
Or trip the power of the hospital.
Yeah. I mean, there was a good few of those in public transport land, I've got to say, but probably not legally a good idea to talk about that.
Yeah.
Especially given world today. I'm going to go back to probably like my most uncomfortable moment, right? Which I hadn't really thought it through. And when I was a kid, I was sort of always up for anything. And I don't know why. And I sort of, I look back on it now and I realise it was part of who I am. But this was one of my weird, uncomfortable moments. So I come out of primary school and I didn't have a very good time at primary school. I was the only ginger kid. And if you're the ginger kid getting brought up in the 80s, that's not a good place to be. You know, Hale and Pace was singing songs, isn't it utterly rotten to be ginger and all these sorts of things, and wasn't necessarily a good place. Knockdown Ginger was never a good game to play, right? You're going to get punched in the head. So I thought in my first weeks of secondary school, it would be a great idea for the charity committee to get up on stage for the school's fancy dress sponsored walk, dressed as the Sugar Plum Fairy, to sort of make a point, right? That like we were going to dress up as, you know, I had silver. My mum had made me some silver wings, and I got a tutu on, the full 9 yards, and a wand, and all the rest of it. And I used to do a lot of amateur dramatics at primary school, and I had not thought of the repercussions of it. And I remember standing on this stage laughing and telling my jokes, and then looking out into the audience at like the age of 11, and these kids are all older than me, all my peers, and I thought to myself, God, I wish the world would just absolutely swallow me up right now. And I got brutally teased and done for that after that moment, right? But I look back on it, and I was thinking not so long ago about those head in my hands moments when I did something really stupid. But I did it because it felt good. You know, I did it because I wanted to do it, and to hell with it. And actually probably raised more money for the school. It did a good thing. I ended up running the charity committee at school. Even the dyslexic kid who, like, you know, not very good at school, is in charge of the charity committee. Why? And I could never figure out how I got there. And then I sort of ended up being this sort of leader in technology and stuff. And I look back on that really weird, uncomfortable moment, and it got me into this kind of understanding that maybe I could never understand how I got to be a leader of anything. You know, when you come from nothing and you've got you're the dyslexic kid, you messed up your exams, you the ginger kid who's gotten punished in it, and all the rest of it. You don't really figure out how you managed to become who you've become, and you look back in your life and like, actually, there was some moments there where I took the lead, and I've always ended up in the lead. I don't know why, and I don't mean in the lead in terms of like winning. I mean, I've always ended up like leading not being others. Leading others. And I don't know how it happens.
I think I know what partly it is. I think it's because you're a very authentic person. Like when we've spoken before, and when I've seen you present on stage, there's not many people that I've seen on stage that connect with an audience as much as you do. And I remember at South Coast Summit when you did when you stood up with Donna in the keynote, and then I saw you afterwards, and I just was like, "Are you all right?" Because you were like knackered, like, you know, it had really taken it out of you.
Yeah. And
I was like, right, you know, this guy, A, he knows what he's talking about. B, he's very invested, and C, you know, it did kind of take a personal toll on you. So I kind of really respect that, and I think a lot of people probably see the same thing. I think, and yeah, just being yourself, I think is the.
See, I get up and I don't think I know what I'm talking about every single time, John. Yeah, every time I get up on that stage, I think to myself, what are you talking about, Whatling? And it's well, thanks, man. I'm terrible at taking compliments, so thanks for that. But
no worries, man.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things. Who knows?
Nice. Right, Keith, I think we've kind of finished for today. So thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate it. It's been a really, really good chat. We'll pop any of your links in the show notes, and any other links to resources that we've mentioned today will also be there too. Music today was provided by our friend Ken Like Fitz. You can find his music on Spotify, the link to which you can find in the show notes as well. And any additional music will also be there too. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss the next episode, and we'd really appreciate it if you could give us a follow on LinkedIn. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please give us a review on your chosen podcast platform. Thank you very much. This has been Sprint Zero. We've been Mike Gowland. Say goodbye, Mike.
Goodbye, Mike.
Keith Watling. Say goodbye, Keith.
Goodbye, Keith Watling.
Nice one, mate. And I'm John, and we will see you on the next episode of Sprint Zero. Thank you very much.
I'm just having a look at your form response, Keith. Did you really want to talk about cocks? So we might have time.
See, we covered that off pre-call, and I like John knows that my sort of little secret thing is that whenever I've seen a blank piece of paper, I've got to draw a cock on it.
Got to do it.
And my daughter, bless her, she comes home, she's got a detention at school, my oldest daughter. And she got a detention.
No way.
She got a detention.
No way.
She got a detention for drawing a massive cock on rainwater on a table outside and making it shake around, right? And I said to her, all right. I said, well, let's get this. So how'd you get caught? She said, my mates dobbed me in. I said, they're not your mates. She said, no, they're just acquaintances. It's not the girls would have gone down with me, Dad. I said, all right, fair enough. I said, who'd you get caught by? She said, the PE teacher. I said, no daughter of mine gets caught by the PE teacher. That is absolutely unacceptable that you get caught by the lowest form of life in school. She said, no, Dad, the PE teacher used to be the physics teacher, but she's doing sports science. I said, okay, fair enough. I said, I'll let you off on that. I said, but answer me one really important question. Did it have hairy balls and spunk? And she said, of course it did. I said, come here, you're my daughter. Well done. You'll chip off the old block. She said, I'm sure Mummy, she said, Mummy just knew I had a detention. She said, but I think she knows now. I said, why is that? Because she said, well, when her and Grandma were talking in Polish, right, she heard Mummy say, well, she is her father's daughter. And I was like, yes.
Man, that's amazing. Oh, my God.
Yeah, I've never been so proud.
Amazing. Thanks a lot, Keith. Cheers, mate. Nice one. That was great.
Yeah, no worries,
have a good day, bud. Love you, Mike. Yep. See you later, mate. And see you, Keith.
Nice to see you too. See you soon. Take care.
I'm Sean. I run the Architects Accelerator. It's an 8-week training program to help you become a solutions architect. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you how awesome it is. We're just going to hear from previous participants.
My name's Mike Holling.
My name is Sander.
Hi, I'm Danielle.
Hi, I'm Luke.
Hi, I'm Callum. I work as a senior functional consultant.
I signed up for this because it sounded something that I hadn't seen anywhere else.
And that's what I liked about this course, is that we were focusing about taking the right requirement and proposing to the customer the right solution.
It's showing how to use the whole platform and how to build better solutions that could last a long time.
I don't have a background in software, and given that it's changing so fast every single day, I needed a guided way of learning. If the solution architect is the direction I want to go, I have taken something from every day of those classes and have applied them to my work.
Found it really useful and I really enjoyed it.
Use promo code SPRINT0 to get $50 off.